All right, it's the Cup of Linux Lounge, and I've got two of my resident wizards sitting here with me. I've got Deckard Kane and I've got Edge226. We are coming at you like a bad Friday the 13th sequel, and everybody loves a good sequel, don't you? Of course you do. It is Linux Does What Win Don't, Part 4. And yeah, we've got 10 more things but this time I figured I'd bring aboard some members of the community to discuss this with. We've all pretty much kicked Windows to the curb, haven't we? Are you using Windows at all, Deckard?
Only for work now.
Only for work. How about you, Edge? Are you using Windows at all?
I do not. I don't even have a need for wine.
Okay, well, I do use Wine, and every now and then I'll run Windows in a virtual machine. And I have to ask you, Deckard, did you upgrade to Windows 10 on your work machines, or are you still on 7 or whatever?
We were very mixed. All my machines I've upgraded to 10, but a lot of the infrastructure is still 7.
Okay, and that brings us to our first one, 100% privacy. Let's face it, kids. When you install a Linux distribution, okay, you do not have 13 pages of privacy controls to disable. And even then, after disabling all 13 pages of this stuff, how do you know that Microsoft isn't spying on you, Deckard? I hope you don't have any company secrets you want to hide from Microsoft. What is your solution to that?
Well, I mean, our company deals with healthcare records, so what we have to protect, we really have to protect. And so I have basically put down my foot and said any NAS or storage area where all of our important files are going to be kept cannot have Windows Server on it. We're running either FreeBSD or mostly Linux, though. For that, we've also gone through and I put in third-party patches on all of the Windows 10 systems to disable all of the lovely features that Microsoft has put into our systems, just to further ensure that nothing happens to any of the documents that we have on our systems, because if they do get out, it'll hellfire will come from the sky onto my department.
Edge, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I wouldn't trust Windows not to do silly things. It's just a matter of, do you trust software that you can look at, or do you trust software that you cannot look at? And I trust software that I can potentially look at and figure out what it's doing.
Okay, and we'll actually touch on that a little bit more later on. But at the end of the day, out of the box, on most of your Linux distributions, pretty much you can be assured that now some will argue, but what about Ubuntu and Amazon spyware lenses? Well, not all of us use Ubuntu. I mean, I'm using Manjaro. All right, but the fact of the matter is, even then on Ubuntu, you can shut those features off. And the thing is, they don't have sneaky little code that's still sending data to Canonical and that sort of thing. So, but the fact of the matter is, we know that by using a Linux distribution, or BSD for that matter, we can have privacy from Microsoft. Okay, let's move on to the next one. And the next one, I love this one because I've done this one before myself, and this is chrooting. Okay? Basically, what we're doing is we're changing root into a broken file system and repairing it, even though you cannot boot into that file system. And as an example, you don't even have to use the same Linux, okay? For instance, I could use Ubuntu Live Media and repair a Slackware or an Arch installation by chrooting in. You can even start a graphical X session on the broken system to make repairs. Now, Edge did an example of this when he was chrooting into a Chromebook. And tell us a little bit about that, Edge.
Well, in that case, there was a program developed called Crouton, and that program called Crouton utilized the chroot to set up the environment to be capable of an X environment. So you can take it that far and have that sort of compatibility and an overlay over top of devices that are pre-existing and running Linux, and just sort of work on top of those things. That is one valid strategy, and it doesn't only happen on Chromebooks, it also happens on Android devices as well.
All right, and do you have any thoughts on that, Deckard, on cherooting?
I haven't really done it myself, so I'm not going to comment too much.
Okay, well, with the cherooting, at any rate, I was able to go in and actually repair a system, okay, and I actually used a Gen 2 disk, and I'm running Manjaro. And of course, what had happened was after setting up Windows to, I went to install Windows 7, okay, and basically it messed things up. I couldn't boot into Linux anymore because it overwrote my master boot record. And so I actually had to go in and cheroot into the system to be able to get things working again, to restore grub, and be able to get things to where I could dual boot the system again. It was a nightmare, but the thing is, I was able to do it. Try mounting a Windows file system with a Windows DVD and then using command line tools to repair your system to access it with internet access from a command line interface. Let's face it, using a Windows DVD, you can't do that. And you can't use that Windows DVD and a command line interface with access to the internet to repair it. So you can't really cheroot in Windows. It's completely unheard of. Okay, the next one, let's talk about another thing. And this one is another one of Edge's areas of expertise. So I'm going to throw the mic at you at this one. And this is the automated build system. One thing you cannot do in Windows is automate the building of a new version of Windows from within your existing Windows installation. It's not happening, and it's not legal. But this is something Edge is working with me on in the near future with the Manjaro Cup of Linux edition, the distribution that I maintain. We're talking about the possibility of setting up something with one of Deckard's machines to where when I'm making changes to the system will do an automated build of it so that as I'm adding new data to it, the build is being done automatically. Tell us a little bit about that, Edge.
Well, it's an interesting process, and you can encompass all parts of your software development with this. And so a lot of our packages are built with automated systems. A lot of our OSs are built with those automated systems because they make the packages and then they put all the packages together and things like that. And it makes it so we have to do less maintenance work and stuff like that when you can automate a lot of that maintenance work and updating it and stuff like that.
It's really an interesting concept, and apparently Edge hasn't had his coffee today because usually he can talk your ear off about this for a good hour and a half. But it is an interesting concept, and this is something that we're going to be exploring a little bit later. Do you have any thoughts on that one, Deckard, before we move on?
No, that's pretty much a summary of it.
Here's another one. Define what apps you have on your computer, and I'll give you an example. Try completely removing Edge browser, not Edge 226. Try completely removing Edge browser, Cortana, Windows Feedback, or PowerShell from Windows 10. Even better, try identifying and removing telemetry malware that's built into Windows 10. You may have to rely on shoddy software hacks to accomplish this feat, but this would also come at the cost of having a broken or unstable system. And this is not the case with Linux. You choose which software runs on your computer. And if you do not like Bash, for instance, I talked about removing PowerShell. So on our side of things, we have Bash that ships with most Linux distributions. If you don't like the Bash prompt, well, then you can uninstall it and you can install something else that's more to your liking. So in essence, you are not locked into the software choices the vendor provides. Your computer obeys you, not Microsoft. We'll pass the mic over to you this time, Deckard.
Yeah, that sort of thing, it's a difficult topic because there is no way to prove that these third-party hacks work, and there is no way to prove that they don't work. But what I can say is a lot of these third-party hacks that disable telemetry and disable the reporting to Microsoft have shown progress in the way of trying to make sure that Microsoft stops trying to steal information from your machine without your knowledge. Though even with these hacks going on, researchers have still proven that Microsoft has been changing the way that the computers talk to their servers to bypass the hacks that have been published. So we're forever in the two-step dance trying to get ahead of them, and I just don't think it's ever going to happen. And with many Linux distributions, this just simply isn't a problem, especially given the modified kernels that some people have pushed out, which remove even the binary blobs out of the kernel, so you know exactly what's going on at all times. And that's really just something that Windows and Mac people will never know about.
It's funny that you mentioned kernels, because that's going to be our next thing before we move on to that one. Edge, do you have any thoughts on this one?
I don't really have anything to add to it. I think what Deckard said covered it nicely.
Okay, and I kind of have to nod my head in agreement when you were saying that Microsoft is always trying to counter things that people are bringing to the table, which is counteracting. They're putting the hammer down. For instance, like Cortana, for instance. They're locking that down, preventing people from using alternative searches. So if you want to have, say Cortana, I need some information from so-and-so instead of using DuckDuckGo or Google, you must see those results in the Edge browser from Bing. And, well, that's not freedom at all. I mean, you're pretty much being locked into something, and that's not a really good thing. Okay, let's move on to the next one. And Deckard already just mentioned this, and that is changing the kernel. Try compiling your own kernel to use on Windows. Guess what? It's not happening. You are stuck with the environment the vendor has sold you. In Linux, we can build our own kernels, and on some distributions, like Manjaro, we can choose which kernel the OS will use at boot time. There are many reasons for building your own kernel. Among them are patching or replacing drivers or components of the core OS. You may opt to remove unneeded code or use different compilation flags, which will result in better software efficiency. There are lots of reasons you would want to build your own kernel, but this is something you simply cannot do in Windows. We'll start with you, Deckard.
Absolutely. And I mean, there have been a lot of people claiming that they've been able to get other kernels working, and it's really, no, you can't do it. Legally, you're not allowed to do it. You'll never be able to do it. They'll never let you do it, because if they let you change the kernel, then they won't be able to imprison you like they currently have. And even still, with the Linux realm, we can choose whatever kernel we'd like to run, whether it be the latest one or one of the very early kernels. We can choose whatever we'd like to run and can recompile it to do whatever we'd like to do. And again, Windows and Mac people will just never know what that's like.
All right, and Edge is working on Orb OS right now, and I'm sure he's had an opportunity to do some playing around with kernels. What have you got?
For the most part, right now, I haven't done much kernel stuff in my OS. However, I have played around with source-based OSs, and I've played around with some ARM hardware. So a lot of that ARM hardware, it was not possible to get Windows on it because you could not compile a kernel compatible for the hardware. So that's the importance of us being able to compile hardware. It's not that most users would even want to compile their own kernel, because they probably don't. But the capability of doing so allows us to get the operating systems on a wide variety of hardware.
Great stuff. Okay, let's move on to the next one here. And this one is licensing freedom versus licensing restrictions. Are you willing to sacrifice your freedom for a false sense of convenience? If you want a really good laugh, take time to read the Microsoft End User License Agreement. That document alone has brought many people over to the Linux platform. Linux users have licensing freedom. We may change the software. We may share it. Licensing freedom means you can. Licensing restrictions means you cannot. Deckard.
When I switched over to Windows 10 back before I made Linux my full-time operating system, I read Windows 10's EULA from start to finish, and I gotta say I was blown away myself. And that's really, like you said, one of the big things that made me switch over. I think it's awful personally. Proprietary software just drives me nuts because. Being a programmer, I will see a piece of software and go, "Oh, that's awesome! How do they do this?" And they'll basically say, "Sorry, can't tell you. Sucks to be you." In open source software, like with Mumble, I know, Mumble seems to be working great even on dial-up connections. People can join in. I wonder how they did that. I can take a look at that and see exactly how it's going on, and we have the freedoms to do those. So that's huge in my opinion, and I think that should be something that everyone cherishes.
And something that you guys may not know, but Deckard is our resident FSF. He's using Triskel, and that is completely free. I mean, you are completely free of anything proprietary on your computers. So, I mean, you're not even using any proprietary drivers. You are not using proprietary anything, and pretty much you had to give up a lot of stuff just to be free. Briefly tell us about that before we pass this over to Edge.
Yeah, sure. So Triskel is an operating system where everything, I mean everything, this is the only operating system like this, where you can read all of the source code to every single component. And it's human readable. There's no binary blobs. There's no compiled software inserted into the source code to make you think that it's open source and it's friendly. Triskel has none of that. There's no bad licensing practices. There's no DRM, no proprietary, no binary blobs. There's no spyware. There's no malware. There's no nothing in the operating system itself. You choose what you install on your system. And by default, in the Triskel repositories, there is no software that will do you any harm. It's almost entirely GPL software. So no matter what I install in my system, I can see exactly what's going on. I can see the drivers, exactly what they're doing. I can see the kernel or all the programs, the Office suite, everything that I have installed, I have the freedom to run as I wish, and it will never obey me. I can also change it and re-release it as I wish. I am completely free to do whatever I want with the OS, and it will obey me to a T. No other operating system that I know of, that's still being maintained at least, has these features that I value more than anything as of now. Because as we begin to go more and more into the world where we're relying on electronic means to get very basic tasks done, we're seeing more and more proprietary software companies saying that their systems are the only way to go. And they slap handcuffs on you when you use their systems, like the iPads and the iPhones and Windows and all those other things. And if we all just used Triskel, we'd all be free. But instead, we surrender ourselves to use these shiny tools, the shiny operating systems, and things that are more convenient. And I have given up just about everything, to run this operating system. I don't use Skype anymore. I don't have very good graphics drivers. I have to replace my Wi-Fi card in my laptop to get Wi-Fi working because the drivers aren't available for it. But I think at the end of the day, the things that I've sacrificed are less valuable than freedom, and that's why I made the switch.
Edge, any thoughts on this?
I took the half route, and I do use a lot of the proprietary drivers and things like that that are required to get the good experience for gaming. But all of my software that I provide to others in terms of tools that I've made and things like that, all of that is open source, and it is licensed under the GNU GPL2. And this allows me to share it with pretty much anyone, get their opinion, and have them collaborate with me. And that's a wonderful thing.
All right, we've heard some very good stuff here. So it's licensing freedom versus licensing restrictions. And for me, the thing is, I like the fact that I can still use my old software that won't even run on modern Windows computer systems now. I think that was the big draw for me. And while I use a lot of free and open software, my old software that I have on my shelf here, I paid a lot of money for it, and I want to still be able to use it. So I'm glad that I am able to. So, but yeah, Linux is the best for me in that regard because I can run those old programs. Okay, let's move on to the next one. This is another good one. Multi-layered run levels. Linux has multiple run levels. In other words, you can drop into a TTY and run a second X session if you wanted to. Multiple users can be logged into the same machine and use it at the same time. There are 7 run levels. 0 halts the system. 1 is for single user mode. 2 is for multi-users. 3 is for networked multi-user mode. 4 is undefined. 5 is for X11 as run level 3 plus a display manager. And 6 is for reboot. Try running 2 or 3 users on the same Windows installation. The EULA says the software can be used by one person at one time. Edge.
Wow. So what you're explaining here means that when I was in college and I had buddies and I had 2 computers or keyboards hooked up to the same computer and we were doing collaborative coding, by that definition, that's saying that that is a wrong thing to do?
You have violated the Microsoft End User License Agreement by doing that. I want you to march right down to the nearest police station and turn yourself in. You broke the law. Oh, and bring your buddy with you. Deckard?
In the famous words of Richard Stallman, he said, "Is it better to pay for proprietary software or to steal it?" And he said it's better to steal it because at least you're not feeding into the machine. So in the same philosophy, I myself have found third-party little tools that will allow multiple people to use the operating system. I don't stand by the EULA at all because I think it's absolutely ridiculous. But yes, that's completely correct. Linux gives you the freedom to run as many concurrent users as you'd like. You could have 9,000 or perhaps just 9. Windows 1 and 1 only, unless you go server edition. And then you have to buy sections. So if you want 5 users, you buy that package. If you want 15 users, you buy that package. And the price goes up and up and up and up and up infinitely. And I completely don't agree with that. So yeah, it's I don't know. It's ridiculous. I think it's just absolutely ridiculous.
Okay, here's something else. Oh, go ahead, Edge.
Under my case, it really didn't matter because both of us were going to school. We were both licensed under MSDN.
And you were both breaking the law. Turn yourself in.
We were both licensed under MSDN and could get our own Windows and install them and stuff like that. So whether we were using one machine or multiple, we both had licenses. So it was here nor there, but it's a weird thing of if you hook 2 keyboards up to it, are you breaking this? Because you're not really doing anything software-wise, you're doing it hardware-wise.
All right. Let's move on to the next one here. We're running close to time here, so we probably got to step this up a little bit. All right, next one is file naming. Windows cannot handle names bigger than 248 characters, and you are limited by the characters that the file names can have. Linux allows you to use more characters in your file names. Try naming a file hash, $, pipe, colon, semicolon, question mark. It will not accept it in Windows, but you could have strange names like that in Linux. Any thoughts?
It's all got to do with the partitioning. It's NTFS at its finest. Linux is like, oh, you can do whatever you want. You want to add in all these wonky characters? Sure, whatever. Microsoft freaks out every time you add any sort of invalid character. It just does not like it. And here we go again with the I want to run my computer the way I want. If I want to put exclamation, question mark, pipe, LOP as my file name, I should be allowed to. In Microsoft's case, they won't allow that, which is just ridiculous.
And you can also use those characters in your passwords, which makes, which makes most of your brute force programs, it's good, because I imagine some of these brute force programs know that, well, in Windows you can't use these keys, so it's not going to bother to search through for them. And so I'd imagine, it would give you a little bit more security in your passwords by using weird characters like that. Edge?
Well, this goes into the whole case insensitivity as well. Microsoft file systems aren't case sensitive, so a capital equals a lowercase, and that again lowers the security.
Absolutely, and I think I mentioned that one in a previous Linux Does What Win Don't, where case does matter. So yeah, that's very important. Okay, here's another one, and this is something that we can do in Linux that you just can't do in Windows, and that is copying files that are actively in use. try to copy a file in Windows used by some program, and you may end up with a 0 byte size copy of the file or no copy at all. There have been attempts by Microsoft to overcome this, but there isn't 100% reliability in using those measures. Linux, on the other hand, lets you copy any file on your system, whether it is in use or not. Deckard, Edge?
I hate to be that guy, but I really have zero faith in the quote-unquote fine developers at Microsoft, because really, what's involved with copying a file? You read the drive, you write to the drive. Why does that matter if the program's running or not? I don't understand why that is, and I never will. We don't have this problem in Linux because we have competent people actually developing programs.
Edge?
Yeah, I kind of agree that it's not very difficult to read and write files. However, I can state one of the potential reasons why Microsoft would do this, and it's because what if the file is being written to? But that just means algorithms to check if the file is currently changing or not. It's not too difficult.
Okay, and I dare not say what Donald's been saying in the chat room below, but he's expressing his love as well, but I'm not going to say that. All right, finally. And you guys heard me complaining about this before we started recording, so here we go. This is another thing Linux does, what Win don't, and that is run without a GUI. Do you know, and I was complaining and Edge and Deckard heard me saying this, I was searching DuckDuckGo and Google and then Bing. Finally, I found a web page, okay? All right, and so here's the complaint. All right, I just upgraded to Windows 10. Now, how do I use it without a GUI? Okay, I want to just boot into a command prompt. How do I do that? Okay, well, I did find a website finally, and that was after doing a Bing search and going through several results there, where a forum basically stated, okay, well, if you follow this procedure, you'll be able to, basically, when you reboot the computer, a graphical user interface will pop up with a window that has a command prompt. That's still a GUI. There's a window showing the command prompt. I want to be in a command prompt. I want to be able to boot the system from a command prompt. Maybe I have a problem with the graphics driver. Maybe the graphic driver isn't working that well at all and is, for whatever reason. And I just had a video earlier this week, or maybe it was last week, where I did a net install of Manjaro, and I basically installed a Linux distro from a command prompt with internet access and everything, and even updated the operating system before even installing the ability to be able to log into an X session. Deckard?
I could not imagine a world where I would no longer have the command line, because I spend quite a lot of time in command line, but it's absolutely true. In few rare cases, now with the Microsoft Windows Server, there are some options called Windows Server Core, which is just a command line on the server itself, which you can then control using remote admin tools on a different machine to control that. So by default in the client side Windows editions like Windows 7, 8, and 10, you can't get to a command prompt anymore. That was really only a DOS thing. And since they cut out DOS, you're not allowed to use it anymore. But they kept it on the Windows Server side for whatever reason.
But that's not Windows 10. I just upgraded to Windows 10. Now, how do I use it without a GUI? That's the question.
You install Linux.
Absolutely. What do you think, Edge?
I don't have too much to add to this. I think it's very nice that we can do it on Linux. I mean, I like that I can do a net install that doesn't come with any graphics and completely customize it myself. That's definitely an enjoyable thing, and it's sad that Windows doesn't offer the same to people who like tinkering and customizing.
All right, so there you have it. So I think we've made 10 more pretty good cases for things Linux does, what Win don't here. I mean, these are 10 things that you definitely can do in Linux that you can't do in Windows, and who knows? Edge is, before we started recording, Edge is already throwing at me more things that we could actually discuss in a future podcast. We've got even more stuff. I mean, eventually we're going to be able to have a book of 100 things that you can do in Linux that you can't do in Windows. So, wow, fun stuff. Deckard and Edge, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. And then, of course, all of the people that are in the listening room right now. And this was actually an impromptu thing. Yesterday, we were all hanging out on the Mumble server. So, guys, please check out cupoflinux.com. And there are instructions for connecting to us on the Mumble server, because you never know when we're going to have these surprise podcasts. And when we do have them, it's always a lot of fun, and we do have a nice little community that you guys can come into. We've got a great bunch of people that are always willing to help. So if you have Linux questions that you need help with, you can come in and get one-on-one help through the Mumble server, or you can just post your questions on the forum. Better yet, even search the forum, because we've got people around the clock that are answering Linux questions all the time. So coming to cupoflinux.com can be to your benefit. And so I know, as stated, we've got some brilliant people. Deckard Kane's always doing stuff with the community, and he even has a few videos up on a YouTube channel. And Edge is building his Orb OS, and every time I'm in here, he's usually giving advice and consulting people. So there's always good stuff going on here. Well, kids, we are at 34 minutes already. So we have run over. We are out of time. Hopefully when I process the audio, we'll get this down to 32 minutes maybe. I'm not sure when we're going to have another podcast like this one, but you'll find out if you're hanging around here on Mumble. That's all we've got. Peace out.